Hi, I'm Louis Falgu, and welcome to The Music Breakdown. So today I'm reviewing Is This the Life We Really Want?, the new studio album by Roger Waters, former member of Pink Floyd. You could argue he was the front man during their heyday, considering that he wrote most of the material. The Wall and The Final Cut are basically Roger Waters albums with music provided by Pink Floyd. And he did a good few solo records after that, but I believe this is the first solo record in like 13 years. That is if you're counting the opera that he penned. So this record is produced by Nigel Godrich, a producer who worked with Radiohead and a lot of their classic records. He's a great producer, and as such, the music here sounds lively, vibrant, and crisp. Really, production-wise, it does call back to Pink Floyd albums like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. It's a great sounding record, which is of course important because even if Roger Waters doesn't end up being able to write good songs, they're going to be pleasant to the ears, at least in terms of how the instruments themselves sound. Not to mention things like the string orchestrations on a lot of these tracks to color out the sound. There's a lot of finesse on this album in terms of the production. And in terms of the songwriting, it's really quite good. Roger Waters is in his 70s now and he sounds pissed off about politics and everything, just as pissed off as he did back in 1977 with Pink Floyd's Animals. The opening song here, Deja Vu, is really quite powerful. Not only does Roger Waters say he believes he would have done a better job if he was God, but he also evokes imagery of drones striking down innocent civilians. Really, the track seems to be about the mistakes we've made in war and how war is still ongoing. And Roger Waters says it all just feels like deja vu. You know, it's the same thing he's been criticizing since, Saucer Full of Secrets. There's a war song on there. So I guess at this point he just feels very frustrated and tired of it all, and he definitely sounds it in his vocal performance on this track. And Picture That is a song that just feels so angry, and instrumentally it evokes this as well. In fact, it reminds me a lot of One of These Days from Pink Floyd's Metal. The drum beat is incredibly similar, to the point where I think he's kind of repeating an idea here, but I don't really have a problem with that because One of These Days is such an amazing track that adding vocals on top of it and making it politically charged really isn't something I can complain about. And this is followed up by Broken Bones, which is a crushing ballad. In here he sings, "Oh Mistress Liberty, how we abandoned thee." A moment that really recalls Floyd to me is Bird in a Gale. And it's not that this track sounds like really anything Pink Floyd did specifically. Just the way that it's used here in the album reminds me of moments like Welcome to the Machine and tracks like that. It sounds very industrial, not as in the genre industrial, but just as in it evokes industrial imagery, which I'm sure it's intended to. But Smell the Roses, Picture That, and Bird in a Gale are really the only tracks here that feel very driving. Most of the record is played very solemnly, and it's beautiful, certainly, the orchestrations on the record, the sound of the record, but I guess my one problem with that tends to be that on a lot of these softer tracks, these more songwriter tracks that Roger Waters pens here, they don't really go anywhere. And when they do, it doesn't tend to be all that captivating. I mean, take The Last Refugee, for example. While it is a very sad song and lyrically very powerful, it's definitely not a bad track at all, but once it's over, I don't really remember it at all because nothing really happened in the song. It didn't really go anywhere. It has a build, but it's a very, very subtle one that just isn't that effective. And this problem is especially apparent on The Most Beautiful Girl, which, once again, pretty sad track when you're listening to it, but afterwards, you don't really remember it because it didn't have a build, it didn't have a hook or anything. And I guess that's my main problem with the album, if I do have one. It's not all that memorable. It's not all that hard-hitting emotionally, or at least not as much as it could be. I mean, certainly tracks like Deja Vu and Part of Me Died, they have an emotional impact, but it's not huge. I'm also left wishing that there were more tracks like Picture That and Smell the Roses. Because when they do come in, they really work with the album's pacing. They allow the softer songs to color out the record and not feel like the majority of the record, which they are. Because Roger Waters can still pen pretty kick-ass rock songs, if Picture That and Smell the Roses are any example. Now the record closes out with a 3-part track. It's essentially one song because the motif stays the same throughout all 3 tracks. That's Wait for Her, Oceans Apart, and Part of Me Died. While these 3 songs are very, very pretty, that is one thing I will say. It's once again another point, more points for Nigel Godrich in the work he did on this album. While they are very pretty, I will say that I'm left feeling a little empty at the end of the record. Part of Me Died certainly could have had more of a swell. Like right when the track ends, all of the strings swell up and then it just stops. And I'm really left wishing something more happened here. Because if something more did happen, if the track had more of a finish, I do think this album would have benefited greatly from it. However, I can't complain too much because I think this is a very good record. I think that Roger Waters demonstrates that he is still a powerhouse songwriter. I mean, and politically active one as well, in such a way where he can make songs that have a political impact, that have a real message. This isn't some pretentious record where he's pretending to say something when really he isn't, which is a problem I have with a lot of politically charged records. This is a record where he is actually saying something, and I give him a lot of credit for that. So overall, I give Is This the Life We Really Want a good 7.25 out of 10. If you're a Pink Floyd fan, do not let this record pass you by. You will probably enjoy it. There's certainly a lot to get out of this record, even with its shortcomings. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Bye, guys.
And it feels like deja vu.